Please welcome the Chief Marketing Officer of Airbnb, Jonathan Mildenhall, and Founder and Chief Executive Officer of Skift, Rafat Ali.
Is mankind? Are we good? Go see. Go look through their windows so you can understand their views. Sit at their tables so you can share their tastes. Sleep in their beds so you may know their dreams. Go see and find out just how kind the he's and she's of this mankind are.
How many of you have seen that ad before? It's a bunch of people. What was that?
Okay, Airbnb does not yet have the marketing resource, either the human bodies or the dollars, to compete with some of our really, really big travel competitors. But what we do have is this wonderful community of nearly 2 million hosts and now 60 million travelers. And that community is the most valuable asset of the Airbnb brand and company. And it's important that we are a beacon for the kind of values that we believe the human race should embrace. And we launched this at a time of cultural controversy because Caitlyn Jenner was just about to accept her award for bravery at the ESPYs. Lots of advertisers were moving away from it, and we decided that we'd take that opportunity to say to the transgender community and the LGBT community that they were every bit as important to the human race as everybody else. And so it was just a cultural moment where Airbnb will step into controversy and promote its values so that our community can always have that kind of sense of a North Star, that we're a values-driven organization.
But a lot of brands, as you said, are sort of averse to cultural controversies. I guess Berlin Wall is not so much a controversy anymore, but you leaned into it as well, if that's the term, I guess, to use.
Yes.
To this Mankind campaign as well. What's the danger?
The danger,
would Coke do it? Where you were?
Coke certainly did lean into a huge cultural controversy last year at the Super Bowl when it had 13-year-old American girls sing America the Beautiful in different languages. That was my last campaign at Coke.
That was the one that a kid was wearing a hijab and there was a
That's exactly right. That's right. And that was incredibly controversial. I was surprised at quite how controversial Americans see the evolution of the American family. But Coke has always had a history of standing up and presenting its values first. Now, there are other brands that get it horribly wrong. I think I used to be a Saturday boy at Benetton when I was 16 years old, and I loved the Benetton brand. And then it started doing a partnership with Oliver Toscani, the famous photographer, but they were leaning into controversy for controversy's sake, and the Benetton brand has never ever since recovered. So I think if you're going to create a brand that has value in terms of pop culture, you do need to understand what aspects of culture you should lean into and promote, because there are going to be some off area cultural opportunities that brands shouldn't lean into, because then you get accused of being just opportunistic.
So you came from Coke, what, about a year ago at this stage?
18 months.
18 months ago. Yeah. So, which to a lot of people that look at Silicon Valley don't really think of branding as being a big part of what they do. You may have told at other venues this story, but tell, why did you say, Coke, I have a huge, $1 billion, whatever the budget was at Coke, and I'm going to come to Airbnb and try and tell a story?
Yeah, it's a really good question, Raf, because if you look, Mary Meeker's internet report this year, she showed the world's most valuable brands from a tech point of view in 1995 and the world's most valuable brands in 2015. 20 years, only one of those brands is on the same list, and that's Apple. So I could write a business book about Silicon Valley being the graveyard of brands, because there isn't history of leadership at Silicon Valley organizations that invest in marketing, invest in brand. So when the technology becomes obsolete, consumers move on to new technology. And that's happened time and time again, with the exception of Apple. And so I didn't want to go to a Silicon Valley organization and be what I would call a vanity CMO. That's having a job but not really having influence over the direction of the company and the shape of the brand. And so when I first met with Brian Chesky, my chief exec, I asked him that question, and I said, at Coke has decades of evidence of believing in marketing and believing in the value of the brand. What is it that you have, Brian, that will convince me that you have the same kind of vision as the forefathers of Coca-Cola? And that guy, he was 32 years old when I met him, and he painted a picture of the travel industry, and he painted a picture of the Airbnb brand, and he painted a picture of the role of marketing and how the role of marketing could truly inspire our community of hosts and our community of travelers in a way that is every bit as admirable as the likes of Nike and Coca-Cola and Disney and Apple. And my job is to really not look at the travel industry for inspiration. I look at the travel industry to help me understand the foundational elements that I need to bake into our marketing strategy and vision. But I'm actually really studying the likes of Disney and the likes of Apple and the likes of Nike to really understand how those brands create a beautiful, instantly recognizable brand that means something all over the world that consumers will have a kind of unfair loyalty for.
But you don't control the end-to-end experience.
No, absolutely.
How do you then, do you think there's a danger of the disconnect from the image you're creating versus what actual people are experiencing? Or some of them may experience, because you don't have control over the whole message?
That's absolutely right. We always say, marketing can tell one narrative, but then our product is actually 2 million homes, 2 million hosts, and their travelers. The product is lived every night as people check into these different homes. And for us, we've got this constant and beautiful tension between a consistent brand proposition and a very diverse product reality, because we don't want to standardize people's homes. We don't want to have the same coffee brand in people's homes. We don't want to have the same beer brand in people's homes, even though we get approached by coffee companies and beer companies and furniture companies all the time. That actually compromises this notion of the surprise and delight of staying in somebody else's home. But the review system is one of the most valuable aspects of the Airbnb product. And we always say to everybody, you should study the reviews of the homes and the guests, because that will give you an understanding as to what to expect when you check in.
Are any of you staying at an Airbnb for this conference?
Ashwin?
It works for Airbnb, that doesn't count. Okay.
So not as many people as I would have thought.
So travel industry obviously loves you. Do you care for them?
Yeah, now I really do. There was a time, we're only 7.5 years old, and the travel industry, when Airbnb first kind of presented itself, I think there was lots of tension and kind of friction between us and some of the established brands and some of the established principles about the travel industry. I absolutely know that in the future, partnerships with a few very powerful travel brands and travel organizations is going to be essential, not for the growth of Airbnb, because we're enjoying such kind of rapid growth on its own, but for the end-to-end experience of our guests that are traveling on Airbnb. And so Ashwin, my colleague, and I are here because we're genuinely looking to learn from the travel industry and hopefully create partnerships that can create an even more unique and surprising experience for our guests.
There's the news that you announced, I don't know if it was your deal, but the Bridge Street deal that happened, the business travel deal that happened where a bunch of corporate apartments are now listed on Airbnb as a business travelers, and business travelers are increasingly using Airbnbs. Some of them here, obviously a lot of others we do ourselves when we go to conferences. Instead of doing 4 hotels, for us it's a lot more economical to do. From a marketing perspective, because there's so many constituencies, how much of it is the message about Airbnb, the big brand, versus the sort of regional things that you do? And you do a lot of regional things now.
We do. And to be honest with you, Rafa, you've just hit on the most complicated part of my job, looking forward over the next couple of years, because we have launched a business travel product, and now we've got 10,000 business travel accounts, and we've only launched a business travel product 6 months ago. And we're going to lean in aggressively in vacation rental space, and we've got a partnership with a big American-based airline company that we're going to announce in a couple of weeks' time.
Start here, announce it.
Where's Amanda? Amanda, am I allowed to announce it? Yeah, good. Okay, so we're going to do a partnership with Virgin America, and I'm very excited about this because Sir Richard Branson and I are going to be on the same flight to Hawaii.
Oh my God.
And it's going to be great.
I don't know if that's going to be...
And both of us are the hosts of that flight, so I'll be serving drinks and he'll be serving drinks. But really, because of the relationship now we've got with Virgin America, we can start to create end-to-end unique travel experiences from San Francisco and the west coast of the United States through Hawaii.
What does that mean in English?
So we'll be providing the accommodations, and they're providing the flights.
So package.
So it's a kind of end-to-end travel experience that we'll have. And those, I don't quite know how that's going to scale and how that's going to work out, but that's what I say about our relationship and our growth is somewhat dependent on big partnerships with established brands and established companies in the travel industry.
Interesting. Public spaces. So I've been talking, we talk a lot to the hotel industry, obviously we cover hospitality very deeply every day. One of the biggest advantages that hospitality has over Airbnb, and obviously they're looking very, very, very closely at you, trying to learn from you in so many ways, trying to learn from the traveler habits, actually even more so than Airbnb. But the biggest advantage they have is public spaces, which you don't.
No.
And I guess that's there, and you will never have it sort of, yours is online only. What can you do to sort of overcome that, if you will? Like, they can do programming in those spaces, they can do all kinds of stuff with those spaces as well, and a lot of them are trying.
I mean, I was really, really inspired by 21C and their presentation today. I have stayed in the 21C hotel in Cincinnati, and it was such an amazing experience. It took me about 35 minutes to get from the lobby to my room because the art was so immersive. And I know that when I finally got into my room, I was in a much more creative space. And then last night, as I'm staying in my Airbnb in Soho, I meet some friends at 60 Thompson because the bar and restaurant facilities of 60 Thompson, clearly I can't replicate in my Airbnb. So this notion of public space and this notion of real world community where Airbnb travelers and hosts could meet up, it's not something that is on the business plan now, but honestly, Raf, if we didn't really lean into that in 3 years' time, I'm not sure we'd be listening to the needs of our consumers as much as we need to. And I think that, just 3 or 4 weeks ago...
So Airbnb Hotel is coming?
I don't think Airbnb Hotel, but I do think...
It's coming, just right.
No, definitely not Airbnb Hotel, I promise you. But Airbnb community spaces that were a fusion of social, food, art, and community and connection, I don't know how we can avoid not exploring that opportunity. I think it's going to be essential for our community.
Very interesting. So Do you think the people who book on Airbnb are really different than the people who book on, online travel sites? Priceline is coming up right after you, after another talk. Do you think the people who book on Priceline.com are different than people who book on Airbnb.com?
Without question right now. Our most developed market is Australia, and I've still only got 6% penetration.
What does that mean, developed market? What meaning in terms of
our most established market. Okay. Our most established market is Australia, and I've got 6% penetration. So only 6% of all international travelers coming out of Australia will travel on Airbnb. So in the US, it's less than 1%. So only 1% of the US population have tried Airbnb. So, the opportunity for us is vast. And so we're still in that very, very small early adopter stage. And my job is to really build mainstream awareness and mainstream trial of the Airbnb proposition, both from a host perspective, get more hosts putting their homes on Airbnb, but then also from a traveler perspective.
And you still believe in TV?
I do, absolutely.
Why?
Because I think that the traditional media integrated with new media in terms of a marketing plan helps boost brand awareness and also legitimize it. So for example, if I'm not on TV in Germany, the German consumer doesn't trust us. But if I can say, as seen on TV in Germany, then the German consumer believes that we're an established brand with established resources and will look after them and their needs whilst they're traveling. So traditional media is still a huge, huge way to drive trust and safety credentials.
You've obviously thought very deeply about storytelling, and sort of what are the sort of lessons you're learning in terms of the online storytelling that you've been doing? Banners and boxes obviously don't work for Airbnb in a digital world. Mm-hmm. What's the storytelling you're trying to do in like digital and mobile mediums? Good,
it's a great question. We are nowhere when it comes to mobile. My performance marketing team, the biggest mandate for them is to really innovate in mobile. So next year we're doing lots and lots of different tests in places all over the world on mobile. But what's really interesting is I integrated the brand media team and the performance marketing team because I want to see if we can disrupt.
And performance marketing team are the conversion people.
They're the conversion people, they're the paid growth people, they're the search optimization people. And what I want to try and see is if we can disrupt some of the established norms in the industry because we are taking we're putting as much a premium on the narrative and the creative execution as we are on the conversion. And so it's the same bunch of people now that are thinking about brand media and performance marketing. And in that kind of iteration and experimentation, I'm hoping that we can unlock potential that is currently not seen by the establishment.
For you, data, the sort of clash between data and creativity from a storytelling perspective, because you obviously think deep about it, it's the age of marketing tech. Half of the companies here are marketing tech companies out there. How much do you as a CMO lean into marketing tech? I know you're very good at sending the right emails to the people at the right time, but what beyond that in terms of using data that comes out of Airbnb to then inform your marketing messages, if you will?
Yeah, it's interesting because one of my observations of companies like Airbnb is we're so data rich, but sometimes we're not using that data in a way that tells a narrative that can help people who are not data scientists really understand the data. And so I like to kind of raise the challenge with my data science people to get them to think of themselves as data whisperers. People who can look at data and not just report out what the data says.
Did you just make that word up?
Data whisperer, no, it's something that I've been kind of banging around for the last couple of years. But like a horse whisperer, somebody who not only sees what's going on, but can interpret it and let other people who don't necessarily understand the data understand what they need to do as a result of the data. And I think if we fuse data science and the storytellers at Airbnb, and if we get them closer together, then I think we can create really, really unique online marketing experiences that will lead to greater business transactions.
So the other side of the equation, getting hosts onto the platform. Big deal. I actually got my first phone call from an Airbnb marketer, I'm going to say a month ago. Said, sir, you listed your listing 3 years ago. Why aren't you still hosting? And I listened. Usually I would bang down the phone. But I listened only because Airbnb, and I knew I was going to interview on stage. Getting the hosts to list on Airbnb, which is also a marketing challenge.
Totally.
And when you do big events like Brazil, how the hell do you get so many people to list it?
Totally. So host recruitment, because our hosts are our business partners, so we think of them like recruiting employees. And host recruitment is as essential as traveler transaction, because I can't go out with so much traveler demand that I can't fulfill, because if somebody's coming to the Airbnb site for the first time and they can't find that ideal home in New York City, it's going to cost me more money to get them to come back and try it for a second time. So I've got to manage the key levers of supply and growing supply, which we're doing in New York right now. So growing supply and then pulling back once I've got enough supply, and then pushing out demand traveler messages. And so all around the world, we're managing those two levers. But supply has grown double in the last 12 months. This time last year, we were just shy of 1 million homes, and now we're just shy of 2 million homes. So that growth has been kind of phenomenal, but you have to manage it in tandem with growth in demand. Is it more than just plain economics for our users, and is there a real difference between what I would call mainstream establishment travelers? The first difference is how much of a fully engaged local experience do our travelers want? These are people who deliberately choose not to stay downtown. They want to stay in local neighborhoods, and they want to stay with people who can better help them navigate some of the local experiences. So they've got a much, much more adventurous mindset. They're not looking to be cocooned and kind of cut off from a city. They're looking to be immersed in the city. And what was really interesting is we started as a budget proposition. People first came onto the platform because it's a cheaper way to travel. But now I've got everybody from budget travelers kind of backpacking around the world to Mariah Carey staying on Airbnb when she finishes her Las Vegas
I don't know if
tour.
you want to boast about that.
I do want to boast about that, because that was quite a big ticket night in terms of the property. And so as we get into vacation rentals, you're going to see a lot of vacation rentals are dominated by the luxury villas. And so you're now going to start to see Airbnb offer a selection of properties that will truly surprise people who thought, actually, we are only a value-conscious, budget-based traveler proposition.
And how does that come across in the marketing?
So the complexity of marketing next year, up until this point, I've treated all hosts the same, and I've treated all guests the same all around the world in terms of marketing messages, media targeting and that. This time next year, I'll have vacation rentals, I'll have business travel, I'll have urban travel. Each one of those could be the same consumer, but with a very, very different need. I've got limited marketing budget. And so how do I use data to really, really make sure that I'm using the right kind of insight to create the right kind of content, and then the right kind of technology to place that content in front of the right mindset at the right time. So marketing at Airbnb is going to get even more complicated than it's been historically.
All right. Thank you very much. We're out of time.
Guys. Thank you, man. That was good.
Thank you.
Cheers.